Hello all, welcome to the Snapshot Primer to Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program webinar. We first did this back in, I think, November of last year, and we did it live, and this is available through our CCLP's YouTube channel. The curriculum for this webinar is, we'll cover what is SNAP, why is it important, the application process, eligibility, work requirements, appeals, and though we won't have a Q&A because this obviously isn't a live webinar, but we'll address some questions that were asked in the live session. One note, this curriculum is available for CLE credit as a webinar. Colorado judges and attorneys can obtain credit for this webinar. We have been certified for that. Give you some time to read the URL there at cclponline.org/CLE-credits-for-webinars/. That's a little complicated. To give you some time to kind of digest that, or you could just email us at info@cclponline.org. There is a small $25 fee for the CLE credit, but it should be fully accredited and probably good until February 2021. So, a few words before we start about Colorado Center on Law and Policy. We are a nonprofit, nonpartisan advocacy organization that promotes racial equity and economic security for Coloradans facing poverty. We were established about 20 years ago, and we, if you want to learn more, you can visit our website at cclponline.org. At CCLP, we are focused on 4 areas: food, health, housing, and income. And we do that through legal and legislative advocacy, research, coalition building. Again, you can learn more through our website. So kind of teeing off the webinar, I'd like to introduce my colleague, Sara Lipowitz. She is the public benefits attorney here at Colorado Center on Law and Policy. She develops and advocates for policies that increase access to SNAP, which we'll obviously be talking about, other human services programs that improve Coloradans' health and economic security. Previously, she worked at the Bay Area Legal Aid in San Francisco and San Jose, California. She's represented clients at eligibility hearings for SNAP, TANF, Medicaid, Social Security, disability insurance, and other public benefits. Prior to joining us, a little more than a year ago, I think sometime in early 2019, she worked at Watsonville Law Center in California, assisting clients who faced employment and consumer barriers. And she has spent 8 years as private practitioner in the areas of Social Security and consumer law. And so with that, I'll hand it over to Sara, and we'll begin the real substance of this webinar.
Okay, well, thank you so much. So we're here to talk about the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, also known as SNAP, formerly known as food stamps. And it has existed in one form or another since 1939, not in its particular incarnation, but during the Great Depression, eventually there were public policies focused on people who were experiencing food insecurity and hunger. We have several federal programs that are designed to reduce hunger. This is the largest one, but others also include the program called WIC, Special Supplemental Nutrition Program for Women, Infants, and Children, which serves pregnant women and children up to the age of 5. the National School Lunch and Food Program, Food Assistance for Disaster Relief, the Emergency Food Assistance Program, the Food Distribution Program on Indian reservations, and food distribution programs that are aimed primarily at seniors, such as the Commodity Supplemental Food Program. SNAP is the largest and most comprehensive of these programs. In 2018, it served 40 million Americans experiencing poverty. SNAP benefits can only be spent on food. Certain items, such as prepared foods, diapers, tampons, other necessities, cannot be purchased with SNAP dollars. We'll go a little more into how that works later on. The first thing that I like for people to know about SNAP is that it is an entitlement program, and that is a word that has a specific legal meaning. The term entitlement has been used negatively by people who are opposed to public benefits programs. This is unfortunate because, as I said, it is a term of art. If a program is an entitlement, it means several things. One is that all individuals who qualify must get the benefit. That means the program must be fully funded at all times for the number of people who need it. Individuals can't be denied the benefit without an opportunity for a hearing with an impartial decision maker. So anytime someone applies and they're denied, or if they are on the program and their benefits are reduced or terminated, if they feel that decision was made in error, they can ask for that hearing. Entitlement programs are the backbone of our public benefits system. Non-entitlement programs can stop serving people if they run out of money. And programs that are funded by block grants, such as Temporary Aid to Needy Families, formerly known as Aid to Families with Dependent Children, are non-entitlement programs. So AFDC was converted to TANF in 1996. As a result, in Colorado and in almost everywhere across the country, TANF grants are lower now than when the program was converted. So one of the things we're doing this year is advocating for an increase in cash assistance to TANF families. But what we're trying to do with that is remediate the loss of purchasing power that has occurred since 1996. SNAP grants have kept pace with inflation, and while they're low, they have not lost their purchasing power. So we view TANF, but in particular SNAP, as work supports that reduce poverty, particularly for children, elderly, and people with disabilities. So who gets SNAP? More than 2/3 of SNAP participants are in families with children. 1/3 are in households with seniors or people with disabilities. So first thing to note about that is that there are many people who get this benefit who are not of working age. And of the working age SNAP recipients, almost 75% were employed either in the month they received SNAP or within the year prior to receiving SNAP. SNAP's an important work support in that it serves people who are more likely to be working in jobs that have low pay and shifting schedules, and which lack key benefits such as paid sick leave or health insurance. So even after the Great Recession and the job market has recovered to the place where the official unemployment rate is low, there's not been a large decrease in the number of people who are eligible to receive SNAP in Colorado. The reason being that the jobs that they're in don't pay enough for them to be able to afford food, reduce their own food insecurity through wages, and go off the SNAP program. So in Colorado, we have about 460,000 individuals who get SNAP benefits. We know that only about 60% of the people who are eligible to get SNAP are getting SNAP, and that's part of our work here at CCLP with our partners and with the state to try to find more ways to reach and enroll and retain people who could be getting this very important benefit. And SNAP also benefits the community as a whole. And as a program, SNAP enjoyed bipartisan support for decades. It lives in the Farm Bill. It is not its own standalone piece of legislation from year to year. Farm state legislators have historically been some of its biggest supporters, united across party lines with representatives of more urban areas where poverty might be a bit more concentrated. And so that partnership has been very important to the success of this program. Not only does SNAP benefit people who are experiencing poverty, it also benefits farmers because it subsidizes the purchase of food. There's a multiplier effect for every SNAP dollar that comes into the community. It's estimated that it generates about $1.70 of economic activity in those local economies. And unfortunately, bipartisan support for SNAP has declined as narratives about eliminating poverty programs have gained ascendancy in certain policy circles, and more about that later on as well. Some of the folks listening to this are probably lawyers or judges, and so why should you know about this program? Why is it important to you, even if you are not actually actively practicing in the area of poverty law? If you work at all with clients and any of them are experiencing poverty, they may be eligible for this program. And that's particularly relevant, I feel, for lawyers who work in certain fields, as I have done, such as Social Security disability, bankruptcy, family law. It can be really useful to know a little bit about public benefits. So when you're going through, your client's financial picture with them, if that's part of what you do, you can screen for potential eligibility. So if you're hearing people saying things like, I don't have enough to eat, or I have a hard time paying my rent, very common, SNAP can ease pressure on a family's budget because it's adding money that can be spent only on food, but that will then free up other money to spend on other necessary budget areas. And so how does a person get the SNAP benefit? There is an application. In Colorado, SNAP is administered by every county's Human Services Department. Applicants can apply online. They can go directly to their county office. They can also apply with a nonprofit agency that helps people apply, such as Hunger Free Colorado, Care and Share. We've got some good partners out there who operate hotlines and application centers where people can go and at least get started with an application. Some food banks also help people apply because it helps take some pressure off of their supplies if people are able to get food through this program. And starting the initial application can be easy. It only requires a name and a signature. The process of actually fully qualifying is complex, however. Applicants must submit information about their income and their assets, and also income and assets of other household members who purchase and prepare food together. The SNAP household is people who purchase and prepare food together. There's some art involved with determining who is in and who is out of the SNAP household. Even if people are sharing the same roof, they may or may not be part of the same SNAP household. And more about that later as well. So when people are approved, the average benefit amount people can expect to receive depends on their family size and their income. The average benefit amount per person nationwide is about $131. The dollars come loaded onto an electronic benefits transfer card, EBT card. They function like debit cards. They can be used at any store or sometimes farmers markets that take the the EBT card as a form of payment. That would certainly be all large grocery store chains, often neighborhood stores as well. You might see a sign in the window of a store that says, we accept EBT, we accept, SNAP, and then you'll know that's a place where you can actually use that. Each month, the cards are loaded with money that is used for the SNAP purchases. Those dollars are already, the EBT card is sometimes also used for other programs that provide cash assistance like TANF. So sometimes the same card will have SNAP dollars on it and TANF dollars on it, or some other program, there'll be other kinds of money that people are using on the EBT card. The cards are coded so that the kinds of purchases you're allowed to make with SNAP will come from the SNAP dollars only, and then other purchases that might need to be made will come from the other money that's onto that card. After an individual or a household has been on the program, they must periodically recertify their eligibility by updating their household income and other information, anything that affects eligibility. Certain types of information that can affect eligibility also must be reported in between these recertification periods, such as changes in who's living in the household, losing a job, a significant increase in income are some examples of those. How often a household has to recertify depends to some degree on who's in that household. If it's seniors only, they might be required to recertify fewer times simply because their income is presumed not to change very much from recertification to recertification. A working family is probably going to recertify every 6 months. Sometimes a senior household might only be every 24 months. In between those recertification periods, not every change needs to be reported, but ones that will affect the amount of the grant do need to be reported. So what can and can't be purchased with the SNAP dollars? So things that can be purchased: fruits and vegetables, meat, poultry, and fish, dairy products, breads and cereals, other foods, snack foods, non-alcoholic beverages, seeds and plants that provide food for the household to eat, also part of that program, though people don't always know that, so I always like to point that out. Things that can't be purchased: beer, wine, liquor, cigarettes, or tobacco, vitamins, medicines, supplements, things that people might need for their health, unfortunately, aren't covered with those dollars. Live animals. So why live plants and not live animals? I don't know. That's how it is. Foods that are already prepared, hot foods, your rotisserie chicken or whatever, not part of the money that you can use from the SNAP program for that. And non-food items aren't covered: pet foods, cleaning supplies, paper products, hygiene items, cosmetics, things like that. So there are some issues and barriers to participating and using the SNAP funding. Restrictions preventing SNAP dollars from being spent on non-food items such as diapers are particularly difficult for families. Those of you with children or have had children know that diapers are incredibly expensive. For families who are going to be needing or using child care, they are very often required to supply their own diapers to the child care center, which adds up very quickly. Unfortunately, SNAP can't be used for that. The restriction on prepared foods can also be counterproductive for working families. For example, a pre-cooked chicken can cost the same or even less than an uncooked one. So this is the time for a little digression perhaps into how they determine how much money should be awarded as part of the SNAP grant. The size of the grant is based on the theoretical cost of a basket of foods called the Thrifty Food Plan. And the Thrifty Food Plan does not take into account the fact that American families overall, and families in poverty in particular, do not have a large number of hours to spend on food preparation. So the Thrifty Food Plan is based on raw food items that can often require significant cooking time. I mean, for example, if you were to shop only the items that were used to determine the amount from the Thrifty Food Plan that you should be getting, it would be, for example, dried beans instead of beans in a can. So dried beans are less expensive but require a lot more preparation than beans in a can. Studies have shown that the cooking time for the items included in the Thrifty Food Plan basket average about 2.3 hours per day. If you were only going to stick to the Thrifty Food Plan basket, that's about how much time you'd spend cooking those items. And that doesn't include time for cleanup, doesn't include time for shopping. The amount of, just to give you an idea, the amount of time all Americans spend on food preparation in studies that we've found is less than an hour per day. Even people who are cooking aren't cooking 2.5 hours a day. So that means that a lot of the time people who are using their SNAP dollars, they are not buying the Thrifty Food Plan items. They just don't have time to cook them. So on average, households spend about 30% more on food than the amount of the SNAP grant. So when they say it's a supplemental nutrition program, it is supplemental in that it's not going to pay for all of the cost of food for that SNAP household. So who is eligible for SNAP? There's a qualification process where there are several parts and prongs of it that have to be met. First, they look at the definition of the SNAP household. And as I mentioned previously, it's the group of people who purchase and prepare food together. Some people have to be included in the SNAP household, such as parents and children. They aren't allowed to be part of separate households. Well, unless they're not living together, but that's a different issue. Other people in the physical household may be optional for the SNAP household if they don't purchase and prepare food with the rest of the household. So roommates, unmarried partners who don't have children in common, or boarders may not be part of the SNAP household as long as they are buying and cooking separately from the other members. The basic eligibility for SNAP requires passing 2 income tests and 2 asset tests. First is the gross income test. It requires that the gross income be less than 130% of the federal poverty threshold for the household size. And then the net income test requires that net income be less than 100% of the poverty threshold. And so they start with all of the income, they take deductions from it, and after those deductions are taken, if it's less than 100% of the federal poverty level, then that household qualifies based on income. The gross income test is waived for households containing persons age 60 or older and people receiving certain kinds of disability payments, although the net income test still will apply to those households. Some states, including Colorado, have also used a different qualifying system called broad-based categorical eligibility to extend SNAP benefits to households making up to 200% of the poverty level. The current administration, however, has proposed eliminating this category of eligibility. There was a federal rule promulgated last year, and it has not been finalized yet, that would remove the state's flexibility in approving families who are still experiencing poverty but who are not meeting these gross and net income tests. Then we turn to assets, also known as resources. The asset test is a liquid asset of approximately $2,250 or $3,500 for people who are age 60 and older or disabled. So what are liquid assets? Most forms of cash, checking accounts, savings, stocks, and bonds. There's also a vehicle value test that sometimes comes into play for vehicles that are worth $4,650 or more. There's also sometimes ways to exempt vehicles from the asset test. Immigration status does come into play as well. Undocumented immigrants are not eligible for SNAP. Certain types of non-citizens who are lawfully present can qualify for SNAP with no waiting period, while others may be subject to a waiting period. SNAP hasn't counted for determining whether an applicant for adjustment of status is a public charge and therefore not available, not allowed then to adjust their status. That's a really complex situation. It's gotten even more complex recently with new rules that have come down. It's a bit beyond our scope today to talk about immigration status and public benefits, who is eligible and who is not eligible, and how public charge is determined. If you want to know more about that, I know that there are some great resources out there that are put out there by the Colorado Department of Human Services. Hunger Free Colorado has a great handout on the subject. There are some national organizations. National Immigrant Law Center does some good work in this area. So if this is of concern to you or people you know, I would really, really strongly encourage you to look at their handouts and their explanations of what counts and what doesn't count, because they really know what they're talking about on that. Also, eligibility for people with criminal history. That was more restricted in the past than it is now. People who have violated their probation or parole are not eligible, as are people who are considered fleeing felons. A rather colorful term. It has a specific definition, and I think it's good to realize that the definition has to be met exactly for a person to be disqualified. So an applicant must have an outstanding warrant and be intentionally avoiding prosecution. Applicants who have outstanding warrants but don't know that they do are not fleeing felons. They can get in touch with their probation or parole or the jurisdiction that has issued that warrant and get it lifted. If they get it lifted, then they are no longer a fleeing felon. In the past, people who have been convicted of drug-related felonies were not eligible for SNAP. Most states have eliminated or modified this ban, including Colorado. For some people who are getting SNAP, there are also work requirements. Although most people who are on SNAP and who are working age either are working or have been working and are intending to work again, for certain groups there are work requirements. Until recently, very recently, as in October 2019, Colorado had work requirements for most SNAP participants. Work requirements were voluntary in counties where there was no designated work program, but they were involuntary in others. So as of October 1st, Colorado moved to voluntary work requirements for SNAP participants, except for a certain subset of that population who are designated as able-bodied adults without dependents, or ABODs. We speak an acronym all the time in public benefits, so we're going to talk about ABODs from now on. And just so you know who they are people who are either over age 18 or under age 50 and have no dependents, as that term is defined under this law. That doesn't mean that ABODs never have any dependents. It just may mean that they are not living with or directly supporting those dependents. So one thing that we we disfavor about the work requirement rule for ABODs is, as we'll go into it a little more, you'll see that it's very restrictive. And also we know that the population of people who have dependents but who aren't living with them may still need their SNAP benefits, and they may be sending money or groceries to those dependents elsewhere. So restricting them from SNAP makes that more difficult. So those folks, the ABODs, they're only eligible for 3 months of SNAP benefits every 36 months unless they meet a work requirement or an exemption from the work requirements. And the work that they are required to do, it's defined as at least 80 hours of a qualifying activity per month, 20 hours per week, which can include paid employment, job training, volunteering, or work for goods and services. So it doesn't necessarily have to be waged work, but it does have to be some kind of qualifying activity. ABODs can be exempt from these work requirements, and they're the exemptions that we have in rule right now: if they are homeless, if they are mentally or physically unfit for employment, if they're disabled or getting Social Security, SSI, another disability benefit. You know, we have several programs with the state, such as the old age pension and aid to the needy disabled. Also, if they have applied for any of those programs and they're waiting to hear if they've gotten them, they are still on an exemption. Folks who are pregnant are exempt, or if they are experiencing domestic violence, they are exempt. For people who don't fit the ABOD category, I just wanted to talk a bit about what work requirements still apply to them now that we've moved to the voluntary system. And the only one that we really still have is that they are referred to employment programs. They're not required to attend them in order to retain their benefits, but if they are employed, they have certain requirements to maintain their job. And if they quit a job, they must show good cause for quitting. Most of the time when people quit a job, they do have a good cause, as it's defined in the rules, because there's many ways to show that. If people had to stop working for a family emergency, for lack of childcare, if they have a job that requires them to travel more than 2 hours per day, if they were on a seasonal employment, or if it was like they're doing some migrant labor, but that's over for the year, they're not, they are not considered to have quit. The job was temporary. They've quit this job, they've taken another job, and they just haven't started that job yet. That's excusable. If the job paid less than the minimum wage, they don't require you to keep working it. If it discriminated in wages or work conditions, if they've enrolled in job training, so they want to get a better job, we encourage that. People can take that time to do their job training and not lose their food. If the employer is not paying them their wages on schedule, they don't have to put up with that. And if they've actually been fired or their hours reduced, they have a good cause. So I wanted to talk a little bit about some populations that are eligible for SNAP that we're specifically focused on right now and trying to increase access for these groups. The first one being post-secondary students. We're interested right now in doing more outreach for people in post-secondary programs, actually for children of all ages from early childhood up through post-secondary. But in particular, we're looking at the post-secondary area because our partners over at the Colorado Department for Higher Education have a plan to increase the number of people who get job credentials or degrees that they need to get better employment. And what they're finding is the completion rate isn't as high as we would like it to be. People start programs, but they don't finish them. And very often it's because of financial reasons. So there's been for a long time just an idea out there that people who are in post-secondary education, such as college students, just aren't eligible for SNAP at all. And I think the standard idea about people in that group are that they are young adults, they are still getting money from mom and dad, they might be living away from home, but they're still being financially supported. They're on a campus where they have a meal plan and they don't really need food. And what we're finding is that that is not true, that a large percentage of post-secondary students now are older. They're not being supported by outside family members. They may, in fact, be parents themselves. And so they need this training, but they are experiencing a high degree of food insecurity. The eligibility for college students is a complicated area and therefore needs some explanation. Many students who are eligible for the program aren't aware that they might be. And so besides meeting those income and asset guidelines, they also must meet one of the following exceptions. They must be employed and paid for an average of 20 hours per week, or, these aren't and, these are or employed and paid for an average of 20 hours per week, participating in a state or federally financed work-study program. And that's a particularly rich area in that we can figure out pretty quickly who's in a work-study program, and therefore we can get some outreach to those folks because they are eligible. Students who are responsible for more than half of the physical care of a dependent under the age of 6, or a dependent under the age of 12 where their county human services office has determined that adequate child care isn't available, are eligible. Responsible for a dependent under the age of 12 while also a full-time student. If they're under age 18 or over age 50, they qualify, and if they're physically or mentally unfit for employment, they're enrolled less than half-time in school, or enrolled in schools or training programs that are not considered institutes of higher education, if they are participating in an on-the-job training program, if they get TANF funds or some other similar program, or if they're assigned to or placed in an institution of higher learning through certain government employment or training programs, they could be eligible. So there's many ways in which people can be eligible, but as you see, they take some unpacking, they take some explanation, and college students are often unfamiliar with how to apply for SNAP. They don't think they could be eligible. It's also true that the county human services offices haven't traditionally interfaced with colleges to find people and help them apply. It's just not been something that anybody has done. So we're very interested in making more of that happen, and we've got other people who are partnering with us to make more of that happen and get some funding for it and do all those things. So we would like to see more students enrolled. Another group that we talk about with special concern in regard to SNAP benefits are seniors and disabled folks. They are more likely than others to get the minimum SNAP benefit amount because their Social Security or pension income is categorized as unearned income. So right now the minimum SNAP benefit is $16 a month. If you qualify for the program, you'll never get less than that. Many people get more, but of the group who don't get more, they are more likely to be seniors or disabled because of the way in which we calculate income. So when people are working, we want to encourage them to work, and we allow a lot more income deductions to help them qualify, and also so that people don't feel that if they get a raise, they are going to come out actually less well off than they were before. This is called the cliff effect, where a small increase in wages suddenly results in an unexpected and large decrease in public benefits that may have been helping them previously. So the money that they get actually doesn't improve their financial situation. And also, we don't want people to feel like the only way they can qualify is to not be working. So these are all really great things, but unfortunately, seniors and disabled folks, their income doesn't benefit from those deductions. So they get the smaller benefit amount, even though they are less likely to be able to supplement their income with wages, and also may have special nutrition needs that aren't being met with the amount of money they have to spend on food. The minimum benefit of $16 is too low for people to feel like it's worthwhile to apply, even if they do need the food, which then puts more strain on local food pantries and other local resources because they do need the food, but they don't have the SNAP dollars. So they're not going to stop eating. They're going to have to find food and other resources elsewhere. A project that we're thinking about for next year with our partners is asking for funding from the state to increase the minimum benefits. So that would make signing up for the program more attractive and available to seniors and disabled folks because, you know, going through all of the paperwork and all the things you have to do just to get $16 a month doesn't sound very attractive. If it was more like $30 a month, maybe, you know, we're exploring different dollar amounts and how much that might cost and what kind of incentives that would provide for people. Also, we see with seniors that they don't understand that SNAP is an entitlement program, which means that everyone who qualifies does get the benefit. Often seniors think to themselves, well, if I'm getting food, that means some young family is not getting food, and I don't really need food as much as they do, so I don't want to trouble anybody with getting on the program. That's not true. Seniors need good nutrition, and we want them, if they qualify, to get that nutrition. So previously I was talking about if you're denied or terminated from the program or your SNAP dollars are reduced in amount, there is a constitutional right to appeal, and I just wanted to go into that a little bit more. The Supreme Court has found that there's a property right in receipt of public benefits such that due process protections apply. That means that there needs to be a hearing with a neutral decision maker. Recipients can have an attorney represent them at that hearing. They're not entitled to free representation from the government, though our good friends at Colorado Legal Services and other agencies that we sometimes work with, such as Alpine Legal Services, will help people with those appeals. Recipients can also have non-attorney advocates represent them if they appoint them as their representative, and there are some excellent non-attorney advocates out there. There are several levels of appeal. So if the case progresses far enough, they can even go into state court. Usually how it works is people have a hearing with an administrative law judge. There's a way to appeal from that decision if it's a negative one, and can go all the way into the state court system. So also, even though legal aid agencies provide free legal assistance with SNAP hearings, we have a large legal services gap in Colorado. The largest statewide legal services organization is Colorado Legal Services. They have less than 50 attorneys to serve an eligible client population of 880,000 people approximately, and not all of their attorneys are in the public benefits area. So that's just to serve every person experiencing poverty with a legal issue that they might be having. So they're spread pretty thin. We would like to see more legal aid resources available for people, and we have advocated in the past for projects that would do that, and of course we will keep on doing that in the future. So I was speaking earlier of rule changes in the program, such as the ones related to public charge, the ones related to broad-based categorical eligibility. There have been a couple other cuts proposed to SNAP besides broad-based categorical eligibility. There's also a rule that has not yet been finalized, but which we may see in this coming year, that would reduce the number of people who are able to, it would reduce the amount of SNAP that people can get, because it would decrease one of those deductions that can be taken from the income. So it would be involved with what we call the standard utility deduction. Those deductions that are taken from income, there's different kinds. There's one for earned income, there's one for housing, and there's one for utilities. They want to change the way in which the utility deduction is calculated, which would mean a loss of benefits to people. And that particular rule would, we estimate, take away about $30 million from Colorado. So we are opposing that rule. You may have heard recently about a change to the rules involving those able-bodied adults without dependents, those ABOD folks. And what that would do is reduce the flexibility the state has in granting waivers to areas of high unemployment. So if previously, if folks are living in those higher areas of unemployment, and they could be exempted from the 3-month, 36-month work requirement rule, but the administration wants to make it harder for the state to decide if unemployment has gotten bad enough in an area to where enough people can't find that work, and therefore they should not have to meet those work requirements. We're particularly concerned about that. If another recession comes, it'll mean that the state can't respond as quickly as the unemployment rate rises. So I think that that ABOD rule is tied up in litigation right now. Colorado's Attorney General, Phil Weiser, has signed Colorado on to a lawsuit with other states that are fighting against that rule. And so we're hopeful that maybe that rule will never go into effect. But as of right now, we're very concerned about it. Just wanted to remind everybody, the enrollment rate in the program is around 60% of the eligible population. So we're not in favor of seeing anything reduce the people who are already eligible. What we want is to see more people get the funding that they need so that they can be stable, maintain employment, and maintain their health. We're researching and advocating for ways to align enrollment in SNAP with other public benefits programs, such as Medicaid. There is some crossover. People who are eligible for one public benefit are often, but not always, eligible for another one, because the income and the assets are calculated differently for different programs. This is particularly vexing because we know these folks are already experiencing poverty, and yet they have to meet all these different requirements. Where we like to see if those can be streamlined in any way so that access to food is more available to everybody, and it's also a health issue. It's one of the social determinants of health, which is why it's a big area that we are concerned about at CCLP, along with our health unit, which also wants to increase access to Medicaid and other ways of people getting health care. So food and health care go together, and we want to see them more tied to each other so that more people can get those benefits. So this is the question and answer period, I guess. I know this is not an interactive presentation, and I'm kind of sad about that. I really like the interactive aspect, but I also want people to get this information. So I'm glad at least if anybody's going to tune into this webinar, you'll be able to learn about that. One of the questions that we had from the previous live webinar was concerning frozen food. So We've already discussed how hot foods and prepared foods can't be purchased with SNAP. Frozen foods apparently can. Some of these things seem rather non-intuitive, but I checked in with our with some of our other advocates and State Department of Human Services and found that yes, frozen food, because it's considered non-prepared, you do have to pop it in a microwave and wait a few minutes. So that's cooking, I guess, and therefore can be purchased with SNAP dollars, though of course it comes back to that idea of the thrifty food plan. You know, frozen food is often more expensive than if you just purchased the ingredients and made the dish from scratch. But then there's the issue of making the dish from scratch. You know, the time it depends, you know, that you need to do that. Some people don't have good cooking facilities. Some people are experiencing homelessness. So it can be easier for people to buy something that's frozen and heat it up somewhere than it is for them to actually have access to all of the cooking tools and time and facilities that they would need to make a meal from scratch. But yes, frozen food can be purchased with SNAP. And I think that's all from me. I think that Bob would like to have a few closing remarks for you all. Thanks so much for listening.
Thank you, Sarah. Again, we do have a CLE credit for this webinar, and you can see the URL up there or email us, and we'll set you up. We also have a comp rate for that for special exceptions. If you want to get the CLE for free, then just notify us at info@cclponline.org. We do grant that on certain exceptions, which I won't get into right now. So, you have any questions about this webinar or our future work with SNAP advocacy, send an email to Sarah. The address is there, Lipowitz at cclponline.org, and again, visit our website to learn more about CCLP and how to support us. You can also follow us on Twitter at CCLP News, and we have a Facebook presence. And if you'd like to receive our email alerts, just send me an email, bobmook@cclponline.org. So thank you for participating in this, and have a good day.